February 26, 2026 Roman Reigns gets angry and brutally attacks CM Punk. CM Punk crossed a line on February 26, 2026, that he cannot uncross. He said something in front of that crowd, on live television, with the cameras rolling and the entire WWE universe watching, that turned Roman Reigns from the composed, methodical, strategically unshakable tribal chief into something that the people in that arena had never seen before. Something that made the production staff stop what they were doing. Something that made the referees hesitate at ringside, because for a critical window of several seconds, nobody, not the officials, not the producers, not the veterans backstage watching the monitors, was entirely certain where Roman Reigns' fury was going to stop. Because it did not look like it was going to stop. And let's be very, very clear about what we are talking about here. Roman Reigns has attacked people before. He has delivered spears, he has thrown Superman punches, he has orchestrated bloodline ambushes that left multiple people destroyed across an entire arena. None of that is new. None of that is shocking in the context of what Roman Reigns has been for the last several years at the top of WWE. What happened on February 26 was different. Categorically, visibly, unmistakably different. The Roman Reigns who put his hands on CM Punk on that date was not the Roman who calculates. Not the Roman who deploys violence as a chess move. Not the Roman who controls his aggression the way a surgeon controls a scalpel, with precision and purpose and the absolute discipline of someone who has never once in his professional life allowed emotion to make a decision that strategy should make. On February 26, 2026, emotion made the decision. And the decision it made was the most brutal, most personal, most completely unrestrained thing Roman Reigns has done in a very long time. CM Punk said the wrong thing. And the entire wrestling world is about to find out what happens when Roman Reigns runs out of patience. Stay right here. This video is going to tell you everything. You cannot fully appreciate the violence of Roman Reigns' response on February 26 without understanding exactly what CM Punk said to produce it. And I want to spend real time on this because the wrestling coverage of this incident keeps rushing past the catalyst to get to the attack, and in doing so, it misses the most important part of the entire story. CM Punk has been waging a campaign against Roman Reigns for months. And it has been, as every honest observer has to acknowledge, one of the most skillfully executed verbal campaigns in the recent history of professional wrestling. Punk identified Roman's pressure points with clinical precision. He attacked the Bloodline's structural importance to Roman's dominance. He questioned the legitimacy of Roman's long championship reign in ways that were impossible to fully refute because they contained enough truth to be genuinely uncomfortable. He peeled back layers of the tribal chief persona one promo at a time with the patience and the specific expertise of someone who has been doing this at the highest level for over 2 decades. All of that landed. All of that drew blood in the ways that Punk intended. And Roman absorbed every word of it with the specific, terrifying composure that told you he was not ignoring it. He was storing it. He was letting Punk build a case that Roman intended to answer not with words but with something that would make the words irrelevant. But on February 26, Punk did something new. He stepped outside the established parameters of their ongoing verbal war and said something that was not about Roman the performer, Roman the champion, or Roman the strategic apex of the Bloodline's power structure. He said something about Roman the person. The specific content of what Punk said, and I am going to be deliberately careful here because the full statement is still reverberating through WWE's internal machinery in ways that suggest it touched something real rather than something simply scripted, crossed the line that exists in professional wrestling between character criticism and personal attack. The line between questioning what someone does in the ring and questioning who they are outside of it. The line that, once crossed, changes the nature of the conflict from professional to intimate. Punk has always known where that line is. He has spent his entire career operating inches from it on one side, deploying language that is devastating precisely because it is close enough to the personal without quite crossing into it. The strategy is effective because it produces maximum emotional impact with plausible creative deniability. He is talking about the character. He is talking about the performance. He is not going personal. On February 26, Punk went personal. And Roman Reigns, who has demonstrated in recent months a specific sensitivity to certain categories of personal attack that the professional framework around his character cannot entirely contain, heard it, and responded in kind. Professional wrestling has a vocabulary for describing the moment when a performer crosses from controlled aggression into something that feels genuinely uncontained. Words like snapped and lost it get used frequently in the industry because they are the most accurate available language for a specific phenomenon, the visible departure from a performer's established operating mode into something that the audience reads as less managed, less scripted, more authentically reactive. Roman Reigns on February 26, 2026, produced the most convincing version of that phenomenon that the WWE universe has seen from him in years. The moment it happened was visible to everyone in that arena and everyone watching at home. There was a specific instant identifiable in the footage, worth pausing on if you have access to it, where Roman Reigns' face changed. Not gradually. Not in the slow escalation of someone building toward an emotional peak for dramatic effect. It changed the way a light switches off. One frame he was Roman Reigns the tribal chief, processing CM Punk's words with the composed, almost academic attention of someone cataloging information they intend to use. The next frame he was something else. Something that did not have the patience for cataloging anymore. The first contact was immediate. There was no pause, no dramatic build-up, no moment where the audience was given time to anticipate what was coming. Roman was across that space and on CM Punk so fast that the sequence of events required replaying to fully register. And the specific nature of that first contact, the raw, unarchitected directness of it, communicated everything that needed to be communicated before a single word of commentary was spoken. This was not a planned spear. Not the orchestrated, arm-spread, slow-build assault that Roman deploys when he wants the audience to feel the weight of the moment in advance of the impact. This was Roman Reigns physically expressing something that his body had run out of room to contain. The difference between those two versions of Roman's physicality is immense, and the audience felt it immediately. The noise in that arena, the specific quality of the crowd's reaction, was not the reaction to a great wrestling spot. It was the reaction to witnessing something that felt genuinely human and genuinely out of control. The sustained nature of the assault after the initial contact is the detail that the 30-second highlights are most incapable of communicating, because it was not one devastating move and then the dramatic pause that wrestling's visual grammar typically inserts for effect. It was continuous. It was relentless in a way that forced officials to intervene not once but repeatedly, creating a physical situation that required multiple bodies to place themselves between Roman Reigns and CM Punk before any meaningful separation was achieved. And during the entire duration of that intervention, during every second of officials trying to create distance and referees putting themselves in physical jeopardy to establish a barrier, Roman Reigns' expression did not change back. It stayed in the place it had gone when Punk's words landed. The switch that flipped on February 26 was not flipping back in real time. It was staying where it had gone. And that sustained state, the absence of the gradual return to composure that you would see from someone who had delivered their message and was now receding from it, was the most genuinely alarming thing about the entire sequence. Let's be direct about the condition of CM Punk when this assault concluded on February 26, because the softened, production-smoothed version of these events that ends up in highlight packages does not do justice to the actual physical reality of what Roman Reigns delivered. CM Punk, who has built his entire recent campaign against Roman Reigns on the premise of Roman's fundamental fragility when confronted directly, who has staked his credibility in this feud on the argument that Roman without the Bloodline's protection is manageable, that Roman without the architecture of control he carefully maintains is just a man, was made to look, on February 26, not like a man who underestimated his opponent. He was made to look like a man who underestimated his opponent's capacity to abandon the careful architecture entirely. Punk has handled being physically overwhelmed before. His career is full of moments where the physical narrative went against him and he found ways to survive it, to turn it, to make the audience believe in his capacity to recover even from situations that looked entirely hopeless. That resilience, the specific Punk quality of making the worst possible physical situation feel like a setup for a comeback rather than a conclusion, is one of his greatest assets as a performer and as a story asset. On February 26, the duration and the intensity of Roman's assault left less room for that resilience narrative than Punk typically requires. The official's intervention, necessary as it was for the physical safety of the situation, came at a point where CM Punk's ability to project the composed defiance that is his trademark had been genuinely compromised. When the production team got the cameras back to a clean shot of Punk's face after the separation was finally established, after Roman was finally fully removed from the immediate space, what was visible on that face was not the complicated, defiant, "I will be back" Punk expression that his most effective defeat moments produce. It was something simpler and more human. The face of someone who had said a thing and received an answer that was larger and more complete than they had prepared for. That face tells its own story. And the story it tells about where this feud is now, about what CM Punk has to answer for saying the thing he said on February 26, and about what it costs to take Roman Reigns from strategic to primal, is the most interesting story in WWE right now. Here is the dimension of February 26th's events that the wrestling conversation needs to spend more time on, because it goes beyond the immediate impact of the assault and into the larger territory of what this moment means for Roman Reigns' operating mode heading into the final stretch before WrestleMania. Roman Reigns losing composure is not a neutral event within WWE's power structure. It is not simply a satisfying emotional moment for an audience that has been waiting to see the stoic tribal chief pushed to a reaction. It is a signal that the infrastructure of Roman Reigns' competitive authority, the specific combination of calculation, patience, and controlled aggression that has made him the most dominant figure at the top of WWE's card, has a pressure point. That it has a specific input that produces an output Roman does not fully control. CM Punk now knows what that input is. He found it accidentally or intentionally on February 26, and the question of which it was is one of the most fascinating open questions this feud has produced. If Punk found Roman's breaking point by accident, if he crossed into the personal without fully calculating the specific nature of what crossing that line would produce, then the weapon he now possesses is more powerful than he yet realizes, and his use of it going forward will be shaped by the lesson February 26 just taught him. If Punk found it deliberately, if the personal attack on February 26 was a calculated sacrifice, an orchestrated provocation designed to produce exactly the uncontrolled Roman Reigns that appeared, because an uncontrolled Roman Reigns is a Roman Reigns who can be beaten in ways that the controlled version cannot, then what looks like a devastating defeat for Punk is actually the opening of the trap. And the audience watching Roman's assault on February 26 has been watching Punk spring it. Those two readings produce completely opposite assessments of who won February 26. And the wrestling world is divided between them in a way that is going to drive every conversation about this feud between now and WrestleMania. There is a dimension of February 26 that exists entirely within the Bloodline's internal dynamic, and it is the dimension that the mainstream coverage is most consistently ignoring. Jacob Fatu witnessed what Roman Reigns did to CM Punk on February 26. He was there. He was part of the space in which it happened. And his position in relation to what he witnessed is one of the most dramatically loaded positions any character in WWE's current narrative occupies. Fatu's entire relationship with Roman Reigns has been built on the foundation of Roman's strategic control, on the understanding that Roman's dominance is not simply physical but organizational. That Roman runs things not because he is the most violent person in any room he enters, but because he is the most controlled, the most patient, the most capable of turning every variable to his advantage before the variable has registered itself as a problem. That is the version of Roman Reigns that Jacob Fatu chose to align with. That is the version whose judgment Fatu trusts. The version of Roman Reigns that February 26 produced, reactive, uncontrolled, driven by an emotion that bypassed the strategic architecture entirely, is a version that Fatu has not previously been in close proximity to. And the specific way Fatu processes the information of what he saw on February 26, whether it increases his loyalty through the specific bonding power of witnessing someone's unguarded self, or whether it introduces a first trace of uncertainty about the reliability of Roman's judgment, is something that WWE storytelling needs to develop with real patience and real intelligence. The Bloodline is not a static entity. It is a living political and personal structure that changes when the people inside it change. Roman Reigns showing a side of himself on February 26 that the Bloodline had not seen before changes the Bloodline. And the direction of that change is the most important open question in the entire Bloodline narrative heading into WrestleMania. Every piece of the Roman Reigns vs. CM Punk story that has developed throughout 2026 has been building toward a WrestleMania confrontation. The direction was visible, the destination was anticipated, and the build has been among the most sophisticated long-form storytelling WWE has produced in the championship program space in years. February 26 did not just continue that build, it accelerated it and deepened it simultaneously. Because Roman Reigns revealing a personal breaking point, revealing that CM Punk has found the specific thing that makes the tribal chief abandon his most powerful weapon, which is his discipline, has transformed this from a well-constructed professional rivalry into something that has genuine emotional stakes for both participants. Roman vs. Punk at WrestleMania is no longer simply the match between the two most credible, most compelling, most narratively rich characters at the top of WWE's current card. It is a match with a question attached that February 26 created and that only the match itself can answer. Can CM Punk, in a WrestleMania match where Roman Reigns knows exactly what was said and will carry the memory of February 26 into every second of it, find a way to use the breaking point he discovered as a weapon? Can he make Roman go to that uncontrolled place again in a context where going there might cost Roman the match rather than simply costing Punk a beating? And can Roman Reigns, who has spent years building the discipline that February 26 briefly dismantled, rebuild that wall completely before WrestleMania? Or will Punk spend the weeks between now and that event doing everything in his extraordinary power to keep the crack open? WrestleMania 2026 just found its deepest question, and the answer is going to be everything. Roman Reigns got angry on February 26, 2026. Genuinely, visibly, personally angry in a way that the tribal chief has not allowed himself to be in a very long time. And CM Punk is directly responsible for making it happen. The wrestling world needs to hear what you think. Was what Punk said on February 26 a mistake or a masterstroke? Is an angry, uncontrolled Roman Reigns more dangerous than the composed version, or is he finally beatable? And the question I need this entire community to weigh in on immediately: does CM Punk win at WrestleMania specifically because of what happened on February 26, or does February 26 guarantee that Roman Reigns arrives at WrestleMania with a score to settle that cannot be settled in Punk's favor? Drop every word of it in the comments right now. Share this video with every wrestling fan you know, because February 26 is the pivot point of the most important feud in WWE 2026, and this breakdown goes deeper than anything else you will find covering it. Subscribe to Wrestling News CC and activate every single notification, because this story is moving toward WrestleMania at a speed that requires you to be watching in real time. CM Punk crossed a line on February 26, 2026. Roman Reigns answered it with everything he had. And professional wrestling has never needed a WrestleMania more urgently than it does right now.